Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Governor Bill Haslam, President of the Wilson Center Board of Trustees, to the stage.
Good evening. Well, welcome. On behalf of the Wilson Center, I can't tell you how good it is to see you live and in person. We have tried to take all the appropriate precautions around COVID, but and so some folks are dining with us virtually. I bet their meal's not quite as good. But regardless of whether you're joining us by screen or live and in person, we are grateful to be back together. You know, my view of the Wilson Center is now more than ever, in a world that has become increasingly polarized and partisan, to have someone who's trying to take a nonpartisan view of working out problems around the world is needed more than ever. And in a world that's become almost post-factual, if you will, it is wonderful to have someone driving toward facts and truth like the Wilson Center is. So on behalf of all of us at the Wilson Center, it's sort of my privilege to stand up here on behalf of the staff, the board, and everyone else associated with the Wilson Center to thank you and welcome you to what I think will be a wonderful evening. Accordingly, I think we have several members of the board here. If you're from the board of directors, if you would stand up and let us recognize you, that would be terrific. I can't see out there, so there's several, thank you. And if you're here representing one of, as a head of mission or a chief delegate from one of our international partners, if you would stand up and let us thank you for being here tonight, we would appreciate that as well. Thank you. Your presence means a great deal to us. Thank you. We're honored to have you with us. You know, the world is under transition, and we've been under transition at the Wilson Center as well. I became the new chair, and about 3 weeks later, Jane Harmon told me that she was leaving. And so not only did I never visited the Wilson Center, I was realizing we needed to start a search. And when you start a search, your fondest hope is that you will find somebody that meets your objectives, of somebody who will represent the Wilson Center well, truly understand what it's like to be to take a nonpartisan approach, and yet has the experience in the political world and across the world to lead the Wilson Center to new heights. We felt like we struck gold when Mark Green agreed to come and be the new head of the Wilson Center. Many of you know him as the administrator of AID. Some of you know him as the ambassador to Tanzania. Maybe you remember him as a member of Congress or one of the other hats he's worn, but I think all of you will agree that having Mark join us at the Wilson Center meant the promise of even more accomplishment in helping us fulfill the mission that Congress gave us. So please join me in welcoming Mark Green, the President and CEO of the Wilson Center.
Thank you, Governor. I was just saying I might want to stop right here. That's about as good as it's going to get. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the 2021 Wilson Center Awards Dinner, my very first one. So you're joining us this evening because whatever your politics or persuasion, you believe in engaged, informed American leadership. You know that whatever challenges the world confronts or in some case causes, none of them gets any better if America steps back or steps aside. You believe in the power of knowledge and the energy of ideas. We all agree that information matters and that metrics are crucial, but you're also looking for clear-eyed analysis and judgment as well. That's why the Wilson Center exists. For the purpose of, as Congress put it some 50 years ago, strengthening the fruitful relation between the world of learning and the world of public affairs. And that's what we aim for each and every day, with bipartisan support from the Hill and the kind support of all of you. We're a place where independent thinking and honest debate still thrive. Now, many institutions claim independence. It's in our DNA. It's why our scholars and fellows join in our work, and it's why leaders from around the world turn to us time and again. It's what brings me to the center each and every day and what I hope brings all of you here tonight. Now this evening, we're going to honor a special group of leaders, individuals whose work and approach represents those values from the Wilson Center. They may come from different walks of life and serve in distinctly different roles, but each one of them is using his or her role as an opportunity to advance understanding and to lift up mankind. Two of our honorees bring an American voice to multilateral institutions that touch people in every corner of the globe. Two others, Democrat, Republican, House, and Senate, they remind us that despite the rancor that gets so much attention these days, there are leaders out there who believe that America is a force for good and then work each and every day to make sure that it's so. Two more remind us of the awesome power of private enterprise and innovation mobilized against humanity's challenges. Challenges, yes, like COVID-19. And yet another, through her role and her voice, reminds us all of how much stronger we are at home and abroad when our leadership reflects the diversity and the values of our people. Before I turn things back over, I want to offer my sincere thanks to everyone who has made this evening possible. My deep appreciation to Larry DeRita with the Bank of America, Ken Slater, Marlene Malik. Their strong, steadfast support of our work continues to inspire and drive all of us. I also want to thank Moderna and Johnson & Johnson for being significant sponsors this evening. We appreciate their generosity. My good friend Eric Cantor from Moelis is here this evening, and our board co-chair Drew Maloney of the American Investment Council. They have offered great support and made tonight possible, and I thank them as well. I want to thank Fiserv for its generosity. Don McClellan, Don, thank you for your counsel, and I appreciate the support that you and Martina have shown. George Woldenberg, thanks for all of your support, in particular, your great support of our initiative on supply chains. I also would like to recognize our program directors. So I'm catching you in the middle of your first course. Because of all of our program directors who are here tonight, could you please stand up? Ladies and gentlemen, you are supporting their intellectual curiosity and their hard work. I know I speak for them when I say that you have our deep gratitude. Finally, the center's work matters most because it's not merely scholarship. It's scholarship applied to challenges and developments all around the world. And we have to face the reality that tonight, in many places of the world, the lands are troubled. Whether it's Afghanistan or Haiti, Yemen, Ethiopia, Venezuela, we all know that tonight there is suffering in the world. And so I hope you'll join me in a brief moment of silent reflection for all those we have lost and all those who are still suffering from the pandemic and the conflicts we see around the world. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Governor Haslam back to the stage.
They're making me work for my supper tonight. I am thrilled to present the first annual Daniel Patrick Moynihan Award for Public Service. You know, most of us think of Senator Moynihan as the senior senator from New York, but he was one of those folks that was more than that. A lot of people thought of him as the mayor of Pennsylvania Avenue, this road that we're on, for instance. He was a critical player in building the Ronald Reagan Building, which is our home, and instrumental in development of the Wilson Center as a living memorial to President Wilson. He also, somebody gave me some notes, and this is kind of hard for a politician to say, but it says, Senator Moynihan was the rare politician who did what was right over what was partisan. So I'll try not to take that personally. But prior to his Senate career, as you know, he worked actually in Republican and Democratic administrations. And the term working across the aisle has either disappeared or taken on a negative tone. But he truly did that to build a country that he believed in so much. So it was in this spirit, in the spirit of scholarship that also defined Senator Moynihan, that we at the Wilson Center created this award for public officials who have worked for the greater good on issues both international and domestic. Elected officials who work across the spectrum of politics to enact legislation with purpose and to expand great policies. I am thrilled tonight to present this award, the first time it will be awarded, to my friend, Senator Roger Wicker. Senator Wicker, please join us. Don't go anywhere yet. Don't go anywhere yet. Senator Wicker has done wonderful work, obviously in representing his home state of Mississippi, but he's worked on things like eradicating polio around the world. He's worked on securing funding for disease research. He is an Air Force veteran who served on the Armed Services Committee, and I think you all have a couple of interesting interviews tomorrow with General Milley and General Austin. I think everybody will find that must-see TV. He serves on the Commerce Committee as well. And the truth is, if you ask people around the Senate to name those folks who are on the good guys or the good women's side, Roger's name will come up because he truly is committed to trying to solve problems. We were talking before dinner tonight. There's so many issues that it's easy to go make a point about. It's a lot harder to make a difference. And Senator Wicker is one of those folks who is committed to making a difference. So on behalf of the Wilson Center, it's my incredible honor to present you with the very first ever Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan Awards. Senator Wicker.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I'm going to lay that down just in case. You know, it really feels kind of like the Academy Awards, except that they do tell you in advance that you're going to get the award, and so you have time to get up here. And so I guess I should say I want to thank my director and producer, Gail Wicker, and thanks to the Wilson Center for allowing us to bring two of our children, Caroline and McDaniel, and their spouses. And thank you so much. And thanks to whoever at the Wilson Center somehow thought that my name should be associated with one of our nation's most distinguished public servants. Now, as the governor said, this city has long known partisanship. Daniel Patrick Moynihan placed this country first and held fast to what unites us as Americans. Now, the governor said a little about him. He was born and raised and inoculated at an early age as a loyal Democrat. But he served as domestic and foreign policy advisor in two administrations of Republican presidents, Nixon and Ford. Then as a Democratic senator from New York, Pat Moynihan stood for the sort of calm and intellectual patriotism that takes seriously America's unique obligations on the world stage. In one of Senator Moynihan's last appearances ever at the Harvard graduation in 2002, Moynihan cautioned that the United States should avoid being seen as rushing around the world looking for arguments. At the same time, he admonished us not to think of ourselves in such narrow terms that we ignore our allies or disillusion our friends. Put another way, the world's strongest superpower should avoid the appearance of belligerence, but make sure our friends know we have their backs. Good advice in 2002 and good advice in 2021. During the Cold War, we avoided nuclear confrontation with the Soviet Union, but made it clear to people of courage that we were on their side and doing every practical thing we could to make their dreams of freedom a reality. We made that promise to people like Václav Havel in Czechoslovakia, like Lech Wałęsa in the shipyards of Gdansk, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who wrote about the gulags in Soviet Russia. They were the patriots on whose shoulders more modern-day heroes have stood, like Sergei Magnitsky and Boris Nemtsov, both of whom confronted the current Russian dictatorship's kleptocracy and oppression, and who paid for it with their lives. And so I accept this award tonight in memory of these and other martyrs and freedom fighters, and in honor of leaders like Alexei Navalny, who've taken up their cause. Sergei Magnitsky's name has now become a rallying cry for those of us seeking to hold human rights abusers to account. Beginning in 2010, I joined my colleague and my brother, Senator Ben Cardin, in co-authoring the Magnitsky Act to allow the United States to sanction not only governments, but also those corrupt and ruthless government officials who violate the rights of their citizens with impunity. The success of that bipartisan legislation led to the passage of the Global Magnitsky Act in 2016, which allows the United States to sanction human rights abusers around the world. In both of those efforts, we were indebted to the work of Bill Browder, Sergei Magnitsky's friend, who kept telling the truth and who fought so hard to vindicate the death of this Russian patriot. To have worked with Ben Cardin and others in this endeavor is one of my proudest accomplishments. GLOMAG, as the law is now known by friend and foe around the world, gives our government and now other governments the tools to stand up for freedom-loving patriots everywhere. Patriots like the dissidents in Belarus today. People like Svetlana Tikhanoskaya, who ran for president of Belarus in the place of her imprisoned husband, and who's being denied her rightful office even now by that country's dictator. I accept this award in honor of those courageous Belarusians. I accept it in honor of the Ukrainian patriots in Crimea and the Donbass, in recognition of the Uyghurs suffering genocide in China, and in unity with the traumatized women and girls in Afghanistan who wonder if they will ever again get to enjoy the same opportunities as their fathers, their brothers, and their husbands. Ambassador Green, I accept this award in appreciation of the young Americans who serve with USAID, imparting values of America around the world. And finally, I accept this award in recognition of our brave armed services members who continue to volunteer for a difficult and dangerous job. They stand on the front lines promoting global peace by sending the signal that we are ready to defend ourselves, but not looking for a fight. The enemies of freedom and security are playing the long game, and so must we. The world needs a strong America that will act confidently and intelligently to advance a freer and safer world. So again, thanks to whoever at the Wilson Center chose me for this award. To the extent you recognize and appreciate that I've played a small part in advancing these goals, I'm most humbly grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. You honor us by your presence, and it's safe to say you're a more than worthy recipient of this first award. Well, as some of you might know, the House of Representatives is tied up with some financial matters, and our next honoree cannot be with us. But we'd like to present the second Daniel Patrick Moynihan Spirit of Service Award to Representative Betty McCollum. And Representative McCollum is, I hope, going to join us by Zoom, but it is not an exaggeration at all to say that Representative McCollum has been maybe one of our strongest and most important friends in Congress. And time after time, if you would talk to folks who've been around for a while, she has made certain that the Wilson Center is remembered not just for our work, but also in the budget. And Representative, we're incredibly grateful. You have, like I said, not only helped us by representing us well up on the Hill, but you also represent the values that we care about so much. So on behalf of the Wilson Center, it's my honor to present you with the Patrick Moynihan Award for Congressional Service. And thank you for joining us, and we will turn it over to you virtually now.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Hasmelin, I look forward to meeting you in person. I want to also thank a few of my friends that are there this evening, and I'm not going to be able to list everybody, but I know we have a very special person in the audience, and that is Jane Harmon, who I had the opportunity and the honor of serving with in the U.S. House of Representatives and work with her while she led the Wilson Center. So Jane, I wish I was there in person to say how much I appreciate all the work that you've done and all the work that you'll continue to do. I also want to give a big shout out to my former colleague from Wisconsin, home of the Green Bay Packers. They had a good game yesterday, but I'm a Viking, so we'll see what happens in the future. Mark, I know that the Wilson Center is in good hands with you at the helm. For many years, I worked with Mark to sustain and support work here in the U.S. House, working with our Senate colleagues to move our nation's humanitarian missions forward, and I know we will continue to do that. I was asked for a second to just kind of reflect on how I got here. Young girl from South St. Paul, Minnesota, which is a Mississippi River town. It is a town where I had a community of neighbors, immigrants from all around the world. And together they invested in schools and libraries and parks and city infrastructure because they wanted children like me to have a fighting chance in this world, to have a better future. So I didn't imagine at the time, sitting in second grade in Miss Halverson's classroom, that I would eventually become the second woman ever federally elected to serve in the U.S. House from Minnesota, and that I would have the opportunity to work for children from Minnesota, the United States, and for children all around the world to have a better future. And now I'm the chair of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, and I have the honor and the responsibility to work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to make sure that we keep the American people safe, that we make our adversaries know we are ready to fight for our values, and to give the men and women of our armed services the tools, the equipment, and the support that they need to do their jobs and to come home safely. And that includes those who serve us silently in the intelligence community. But I'm focused. I'm focused on making the power of American leadership make our lives better here at home and around the world. One of my greatest accomplishments occurred early in Congress. Mark and I were both members of the Foreign Affairs Committee under the leadership of Chairman Henry Hyde, who became a very dear mentor to this pro-choice Democrat. He taught me the meaning of working across the aisle. While serving on that committee with Mark, the chairman helped me secure a 10% set aside for orphans and vulnerable children in the PEPFAR reauthorization. That provision exemplifies a generous way in which Americans can make a difference by providing billions of dollars to meet the needs of millions of AIDS orphans, allowing them to go to school, allowing them to access nutrition and healthcare, and yes, allowing them to be welcomed in their villages because we stood up for their rights too. And now I'm working with a dear colleague that I serve on the Appropriations Committee with, Congressman Fortenberry, to reauthorize the Feed the Future program to improve our nation's response to the global global food insecurity, providing nutrition around the world. These two pieces of legislation that I've had the ability and the honor to author are changing the lives of children, but no one in these institutions do it alone. We do it working together. So I'm going to read a quote. We did a little research on Woodrow Wilson's philosophy, and I liked this one, and I quote, "You are here in order to enable the world to live more amply, with greater vision, with a finer spirit of hope and achievement. You are here to enrich the world." And that's what the Wilson Center helps many of us in Congress do through their research and through all their work and their sharing of work and bringing people together to have great conversations. And as was pointed out, I'm here at home in my office because we do have great challenges right here in the United States. But I believe that we can work together to find a finer spirit, to create opportunities for hope and achievement, and yes, to take action to move America forward. So I've taken the path of a legislator, not an activist, not an agitator or authoritarian, but a collaborator, a partner with my congressional colleagues, my fellow citizens, and people of goodwill from all around the world. So it was my pleasure when I was chair and ranking member of the Interior Committee to make sure that the Wilson Center was properly funded. And I spent some very tough years defending the Wilson Center, but I did so with the support of so many of my colleagues. It's been worth the effort because I really believe strongly about this institution as you do. So to the leadership and to the professional staff at the Wilson Center, you provide us with great work. And to quote again, Woodrow Wilson, a greater vision to enrich the world. So I'm honored to receive this award because I do value the work of the Woodrow Wilson Center, and I look forward to using the resources available to me as defense chair as we fight not only to protect our freedoms and our values here at home, but as we work together to fight our common enemy, climate change, that the Wilson Center has done so much work on. So thank you for allowing me to join you this evening virtually. And to all of you, have a very good evening, and I'll be listening to the rest of the program as I work in my office. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCollum. Thank you very much. Thank you, and I think you can resume your dinner. I'm hoping. Thanks.
Please welcome back Ambassador Mark Green.
There's no such thing as a free lunch or a free dinner. You have one more set to listen to before we get to continue with the dinner. You know, the Woodrow Wilson Awards are given to those individuals whose actions and accomplishments, either in their careers or through their service, reflect President Wilson's belief, and I'm quoting, that there is no higher religion than human service. To work for the common good is the greatest creed. Johnson & Johnson and Moderna rose to the challenge of pioneering and providing life-saving medicines to combat COVID-19. These companies remind us all of the power of innovation and private enterprise and the role that it plays in American engagement. Now, sometimes I think people fail to realize that in so much of the world, when they think of America, they don't necessarily think of the Capitol or the White House, Pennsylvania Avenue, the monuments. They think of free enterprise and innovation. They think of the vibrancy of the American dream and what we can do when private enterprise is unleashed. And that's something worth celebrating. Now, while we still have a ways to go in bringing the power of these miracle vaccines to every region of the world, these companies and their leaders are giving us all hope of a brighter, healthier future. They remind us of what can be when we do unleash the power of innovation. And so the Woodrow Wilson Center is proud to present the Woodrow Wilson Awards to Stéphane Bancel, the CEO of Moderna, and Alex Gorsky, CEO of Johnson & Johnson. They are joining us remotely. And we will first hear from Stéphane. Stéphane, I'm hoping seamlessly you will appear on the screen.
Thank you, everybody, and good evening. Sorry, I couldn't be here in person. Things are really busy, as you can imagine, between getting the booster to the American people and the pediatric vaccine authorization. It's an incredible honor to receive this award. I accept it with a lot of humility. It took a village, a very big team, to get Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine to the American people in less than a year from the start of the pandemic, and then to the world. I would like to thank our employees and their families. Their sacrifice, their commitment, fighting this virus was humbling. They worked literally days and nights, pulling all-nighters, working every Saturday and every Sunday, because we knew every hour mattered to help save people, to get us back to normal life. I want to thank our suppliers who took incredible business risk so we could save additional hours, additional days. This has been an incredible partnership between industry and the government. I would like to thank Dr. Fauci's team for their help with many, many assays, many tests. I would like to thank the team at the CDC and the FDA. I've been in this industry for 25 years. If you had told me over the last 25 years we could go so fast, I would not have believed it. And last but not least is only in America. Moderna is an incredible American innovation story. Many people think it was an overnight story, but this was 10 years of hard work, billions of dollars of investment, and people committed to find a way through innovation to change the world. So with this, Ambassador Green, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stéphane. Alex, are you joining us from Johnson?
Thank you, Ambassador Green. And it's really an incredible honor to receive the Innovative Enterprise Award for Diplomacy. But as Stéphane just noted, all of us fortunate enough to be in these kind of roles always realize that it's really not about us at all. It's about the incredible colleagues and employees that we have a chance to work with every day who really brought this to life. And who, in addition to being scientists, chemists, and engineers working in laboratories, are also mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters who were in it absolutely 100% of the time throughout this pandemic. So I couldn't be more proud to join you and Stéphane Bancel of Moderna. And I really want to congratulate him and his team as well on this celebration tonight. In fact, I remember a time about a summer ago when from my backyard, Stéphane and I had an opportunity to spend some time on the phone. And it was at a very contentious time where there was concern that perhaps the vaccines were being rushed a bit too much, where those of us in industry came together in a very collaborative partnership effort and felt it was very important to make a strong, explicit statement that we would in fact be following the most rigorous regulatory guidelines to ensure that all of these vaccines were safe and effective. And for that kind of partnership, Stéphane, and that kind of leadership, I'm very thankful and proud to call you, again, a partner and a friend. As all of you know, that for more than 50 years, the Wilson Center, well, it's been working every day to advance President Woodrow Wilson's vision of a more secure and equitable and prosperous world through open dialogue. Think about that for a minute. That very statement would likely be more associated with something you would find today in social media versus 50 years ago. So that kind of vision was so important in framing why we're here tonight. And as we come together in year two now of this unprecedented global pandemic that few of us could ever have imagined 20, 30 years ago that we would be in this kind of a position, I think everyone gathered here tonight would agree that the Wilson Center's mission, well, it's more relevant and urgent than ever. From the very earliest days of COVID-19, when there was so much uncertainty, so much concern, when leaders everywhere were grappling with disruption, uncertainty, one thing became eminently clear, and that was the best way to confront a health challenge of this magnitude would be through shared action and global cooperation at every level. And I could not be more proud of our industry and the way that we've worked with so many different stakeholders, collaborating, and that kind of partnership, well, it's been so instrumental, both in developing multiple vaccines for COVID-19, but very importantly, in actually getting those shots in arms to as many people as possible around the world. We still have much more work to do, but we all have a shared goal. And we believe one of the true silver linings of this pandemic has been seeing what can happen when we truly collaborate across industries, organizations, international borders, all for the benefit of humanity. And when all of us as leaders live up to the Wilson spirit of one global community working together, well, there's no challenge too great for us to take on. So thank you. Thank you again for this honor, and please enjoy the rest of your evening.
A wonderful, hopeful start to the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please continue on with your meal. Good evening again. So how many ambassadors and recovering ambassadors do we have here this evening? Please, show of hands. A fair number. So as they can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, there are few honors greater than being an ambassador, being your country's voice in a foreign land. But at times, there are few jobs more demanding than being an ambassador. You're supposed to have one boss, the president. In reality, you have many. And there are times when you are pulled in multiple directions by competing cables and conflicting directives. So in 2008, I was the ambassador to Tanzania. And my host country president, Jakaya Kikwete, had just become chairman of the African Union. Everybody had ideas about what I should tell him to do, what he should do, and the cables were coming fast and furious. And in one of those stretches of competing directives, I put one of the directives off because, in my judgment, it was simply less important than a few others. Foggy Bottom was not amused. And I got a call from my Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary, or PDAS. And she simply said, "Okay, Mark, give me your logic." And I told her. And she paused and said, "Okay, I can work with that. I'll go to bat for you." Her name was Linda Thomas-Greenfield. In my book, that moment alone merits this award. But admittedly, there's a little bit more. So tonight we are presenting our Global Public Service Award to UN Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, not only for her work in the wilds of Turtle Bay, but also for what she stands for. Linda is a forceful voice for human rights and a staunch critic of authoritarian regimes. Most notably, she has found ways to do all of that with a smile. She practices what she has termed gumbo diplomacy, working important issues with her counterparts over home-cooked meals from her home state of Louisiana. A wise man once said that a great meal isn't defined by what's on the table, though, it's what's on the chairs. And gumbo is the excuse, or maybe the bait, but it's really her battle-tested diplomatic skills that make it all work. She's worked her way up through a range of important posts, from ambassador to Liberia to Director General of the Foreign Service, from Assistant Secretary for African Affairs to the UN mission in Geneva, in between posts in places like, Pakistan and Nigeria. I would also argue that perhaps her most important qualification is that she went to the University of Wisconsin. Go Bucky. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in honoring my PDAS, our ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield. Linda, congratulations. It's good to have you with us.
Mark, thank you so much for that introduction. And I don't recall that conversation exactly the way you recall the conversation, but we did come out in the same place. And let me thank all of you there tonight for the great honor that is being awarded to me. I'm truly, truly humbled. And I have to say, I'm sorry I'm not in the room with you. As I was waiting and I heard that you guys were all enjoying your meal, I felt neglected sitting here waiting for all of you. You know, I served in the Foreign Service for over 35 years. And just so you don't start trying to figure out how old I am, I was pretty young when I started. In all seriousness, I've found the longer you work in foreign policy and the higher you go up, the easier it can be to forget why we do this work. Some time ago, I was walking in the streets of Arlington, Virginia, when someone stopped me on the sidewalk and said, "Are you Linda?" And I do like to be referred to by that name instead of ambassador. And I wasn't sure how this person knew me. Maybe she'd worked with me in the State Department, I thought, or maybe she'd seen me in a congressional hearing. It wasn't clear. But then she said to me, "I'm a Sudanese refugee, and you processed me for resettlement here in America." And it really brought home to me the importance of the work that we do and how it affects real people. And I always say that every single day, if you know that you're doing something that has a positive impact on people's lives, then you know you're doing something good. I'm just now coming off the heels of High Level Week here in New York, the 76th United Nations General Assembly. And many of you know they call it the Super Bowl of diplomacy. And I felt like the quarterback sprinting from one meeting to the next and getting the ball across the finish line for all of our various visitors. We set out to lead with our values and to address our top priorities, starting with the COVID-19 pandemic, combating the climate crisis, and defending human rights, democracy, and the international rules-based order. These are big issues that are often talked about from the 10,000-foot view. It's called High Level Week for a reason. But we would do well to remind ourselves constantly of the connections between our work and the way it serves everyday people and the world's most vulnerable people. The president announced last week that we would be donating 500 million more vaccine doses for a total of 1.1 billion doses, more than any other country's donations combined. We're doing this because nobody is safe until everyone is safe, and because there's a real person who benefits from every single one of those doses. The president referred to it as a dose of hope. Similarly, last week, we advanced vigorously tackling climate change. The president announced he would work with Congress to quadruple climate aid to poor countries more vulnerable to the climate crisis. Special Envoy Kerry crisscrossed New York, just as he had been crisscrossing the world, to raise climate ambitions of nations in advance of COVID-26. And Secretary Blinken told the Security Council to stop debating whether the climate crisis belongs on the agenda and instead ask how the Council can leverage its unique powers to address it. These actions are abstract, but ultimately they are about stopping the devastating hurricanes, the floods, such as what we experienced here in New York a few weeks ago, wildfires that have destroyed the homes and lives of so many millions of our friends and neighbors. And the same is true for our work defending democracy, human rights, and the international rules-based order. It's why President Biden is convening a summit on democracy this December, bringing together a diverse set of democracies to demonstrate that a government by and for the people is still the best way to deliver for all of our people. We're running to be on the Human Rights Council based on a similar principle, that by having a seat at the table, We can push back against those who seek to corrupt the body and help build a united front of allies and partners to hold human rights abusers accountable. Defending democracy, promoting human rights, holding human rights abusers accountable, these aren't just nice ideas. The journalist who gets locked up for doing their job deserves their freedom. The protesters who face violence for demanding democracy deserve our protection. And when a humanitarian aid worker is killed for trying to save the lives of innocent citizens, that demands accountability. And so in everything we do, I try to remember who we are serving. And I'm honored to be on the team of President Biden and Vice President Harris. And it really is a privilege of a lifetime. But above all, I'm honored to serve the American people and the world's most vulnerable. Every vote, every negotiation, every policy push is about them. It's on their behalf. To me, that is what it means to be a public servant. And so I can think of no greater honor than to be recognized for those efforts, to be recognized for the work that I love doing every day, having the American flag behind me and having it fly in front of me. I'm beyond humbled by this award, and I promise all of you in the days and weeks to come, I will do everything in my power to live up to this honor. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screens for a video presentation.
The Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars is pleased to announce the establishment of a new award celebrating the life and accomplishments of William Monroe Trotter. William Monroe Trotter is an important figure in the American Civil Rights Movement. His story is an essential part of the American experience.
The story of William Monroe Trotter and his willingness to confront President Wilson over racial segregation offers us important lessons from history. First, it points out that Wilson, like so many other leaders of his time, was full of contradictions and, yes, shortcomings. Second, the courage that Trotter showed in bringing his protest to the Oval Office offers us an example of what real leadership looks like.
Born in Hyde Park, Massachusetts in 1872, Trotter received graduate and postgraduate degrees at Harvard University. He was the first man of color to earn a Phi Beta Kappa Key there. A real estate businessman in Boston, Trotter became an outspoken activist for African American civil rights and editor of the Boston-based Guardian newspaper. In 1905, he joined W.E.B. Du Bois in founding the Niagara Movement, a precursor to the NAACP. Until his death in 1934, Trotter fought for the equal treatment of African American soldiers, presented demands for civil rights in France after World War I, and fought for federal anti-lynching legislation. Trotter's story is also critical to understanding the often overlooked contradictions of the legacy of the 28th President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson. As president, Wilson appointed several segregationists to senior positions and presided over the expanded segregation of the federal service. That involves separating federal employees by race, firing numerous black officials, and restricting black people's opportunities for hiring and advancement. In 1914, Trotter confronted Wilson during a meeting over his administration's expanded segregation of the federal civil service. Speaking for a delegation of black professionals, he informed Wilson that separation and distinction marking is something that must be a humiliation. Wilson defended the segregationist policies as preventing racial friction, declared himself offended by Trotter's tone, and ejected Trotter from the White House.
By issuing this award, the Wilson Center is recognizing the important contributions that Black Americans have made and are making to the formulation, implementation, and analysis of American foreign policy. I'm extremely proud of the Wilson Center for taking this step and look forward to the other steps that we'll be taking in the future.
This award memorializes William Trotter's legacy, his tremendous bravery, visionary fire, and preemptive leadership as he fought long and hard for justice, equality, and civil rights in the face of a divided America.
The mission of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars is built on learning and knowledge. We are proud to offer an award named in honor of William Monroe Trotter.
Recognizing the inherent strength in our country's diversity and reminding us that our history, though painful at times, must be addressed unflinchingly, the William Monroe Trotter Leadership Award is adorned with his lifelong credo, "For every right with all thy might."
Please welcome back Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield.
Hello again. Earlier, I spoke to you about how important it is for public servants to remember who they serve. No one, absolutely no one understands this better than my good friend, Congresswoman Karen Bass. For decades, Congresswoman Bass has dedicated her career towards service to others. Both of us have worked for a long time on transforming America's relationship with the African continent, and we've traveled together there many times. I saw firsthand how her compassion for the world's most vulnerable is matched only by her brilliance at accomplishing the goals of the American people. Her life work has been to advance equity and justice. She has been a particularly vocal and vociferous advocate for Black people in communities, from her days as a community organizer at the Community Coalition to serving as the Speaker of the California State Assembly, to representing Californians in Congress for over a decade. For all of that noble service, today, Congresswoman Bass, we honor you with the William Monroe Trotter Leadership Award. Trotter was many things. As you heard, he was a thinker, an activist, a civil rights advocate. And as that video showed, he challenged President Wilson's support for segregation of Black federal employees in the workplace. You can draw a direct line between that confrontation and the careers Congresswoman Bass and I have enjoyed. He led the way. Trotter was also a journalist. He published The Guardian, which had a striking motto, "For every right with all thy might." I can think of no better words to describe the career of Congresswoman Bass. For every right with thy might. It is my great privilege to present Congresswoman Bass with the William Monroe Trotter Leadership Award.
Well, thank you so much. And let me just say, this award is so important to me, and it's extra special that it was presented by our esteemed ambassador. I was talking to her recently and told her how proud I am when I see her on TV regularly. I told her, I don't know when I saw a UN ambassador, a US ambassador to the UN that had a higher profile than our Linda Thomas-Greenfield, who is affectionately known as LTG. She has been a hero to me and also a mentor, coming into Congress, never having served in the Foreign Service, and wanted to come to Congress and wanted to work on African issues. And I quickly met LTG. She took me under her wing, and I was just so thrilled when she was confirmed to be our ambassador to the United Nations. I want to thank Ambassador Mark Green and the Wilson Center for your honesty and forthrightness in presenting this award and in telling the history. We're going through a big challenge right now in our country over whether or not to tell the truth. And I always say to people around the world that one of our strengths is the fact that we have had challenges, we have weaknesses, we have contradictions, but we are always striving to make the United States a more perfect union. And this is part of it. And so for me to receive the first ever William Monroe Trotter Leadership Award makes it all the more special. And I'm very grateful to be presented with this award. I know Mr. Trotter was a trailblazer, being Harvard's first Black Phi Beta Kappa member, and some of his efforts as a social justice warrior included fighting for that federal commitment to equal rights before Black soldiers participated in the United States' First World War, and observing the 1919 Paris Peace Conference, where he called for an end to colonialism in Africa. Just think for a minute, an African-American leader going to the White House and actually challenging a president. That is incredible. So these are the things that I can relate to in his past, with my recent efforts around trying to reform our system of policing in the United States with the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Sadly, the world witnessed the torture and murder of George Floyd. The world also witnessed and participated in massive protests in every state in the country and many countries around the world. And Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield, before you got to the United Nations, I know that that the issue of policing in America was even raised at the United Nations level. But when I talked to African leaders about what was going on in the United States, I always pointed out, you see, it is true, it is a flaw. However, in the protests that happened all over the country, we might not have succeeded yet in Washington in terms of passing comprehensive legislation, but legislation and reforms were passed all around the country. And the protests did result in change. It resulted in change in many states. It's resulted in change in many counties and cities. And it's an example of our democratic process. Well, I've worked in Congress now on Africa for 11 years, and I believe that with the current administration and the leadership that we have in place, we can begin to help shift the narrative by decreasing the focus on aid and development and increasing the focus on trade. I know when Ambassador Green was the administrator for USAID, we talked about this many times. We talked about shifting the paradigm from how we do foreign aid into more capacity building and partnership with African countries rather than a charity model. So I believe the time is now for us to do just that. I recently met with the presidents from Angola, Zambia, and Namibia. And while each country's situation is different, they all reiterated the need for the United States to use its soft power and engage more through business and culture. I also believe that we can move US foreign policy forward in a more lasting way if we can bring the continent's vast, diverse culture to the world by highlighting their music, movies, and helping them export their food within the continent and internationally, instead of us promoting aid without a real economic alternative. Recently, I've been thinking about my hometown of Los Angeles and thinking about how I can continue to further the relationship with the African continent. And I am looking forward to inviting leaders from Africa to Los Angeles and introducing them and promoting business relationships. So no matter where I am, whether I'm in Washington or in Los Angeles, my commitment to promoting US relations around the world will continue. And I just again want to thank the Wilson Center for your honesty and for your commitment to the work of all around the world, and the honor for making me the first ever recipient of this leadership award. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable Drew Maloney, Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees of the Wilson Center.
Thank you, David Malpass. If you'll make your way up, and while David is coming forward, I just want to do a special recognition to Senator Roger Wicker, and a thank you and a congratulations. When I was fresh out of law school and was looking for my first job in public policy, Senator Wicker hired me, so I would not be here today if it wasn't for him giving me that opportunity. So thank you, Senator Wicker. David? So now I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce another good friend, former colleague. Tonight's award is the Leadership Through Alliances Award, which is given to a person that exemplifies international collaboration and leadership for the public good. I am thrilled to present this award to my friend, David Malpass. David and I first met several years ago over breakfast up the street at Old Ebbitt as we were both preparing for Treasury Department nominations. Fortunately, our nominations did not take as long as the current nominations did, so we made it through. After serving as the Undersecretary for Treasury and International Affairs, David was selected as the 13th President of the World Bank. Through his tenure at the World Bank, David is focused on building partnerships to reduce poverty, improve food security, and address infrastructure challenges in the world's neediest economies. But most significantly tonight, we celebrate his work to make sure the world's most vulnerable countries can finance and have access to vaccines. David has been working tirelessly to make sure the valuable work of the vaccine companies that were just honored here earlier tonight make its way to people all around the world. David's leadership in this area has saved and helped save thousands and thousands of lives around the world. Please join me in thanking David Malpass, World Bank President. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Drew, and thank you, Governor Haslett. Thank you, Mark Green. Thank you, Wilson Center. It's a great honor to be here tonight, and for a really good cause. Vaccinations is something that is desperately needed by countries, by developing countries, and it's something we, the World Bank, have been working on hard, and many of you in the room are also working on hard. As I look back, I started in Washington, and I won't go through it all, but we saw John Negroponte this morning, and that was the start of it. In 1984, I was in Tegucigalpa in Guatemala City, and I saw the ambassador from Guatemala here tonight, and it was a development challenge on how can we help countries actually move ahead. Even today, that is still and remains the challenge as we think about the need for electricity, for clean water, for health and sanitation, for climate change efforts, for education, for children and girls. It's all a huge challenge. I worked for Secretary Baker on those issues and at the State Department with him and with others, also people that I've seen tonight, and it's just a great honor to be here with friends that have been working on these issues for so long. I wanted to leave you with two basic thoughts, and then I'll do the necessary step of promoting the World Bank. We couldn't be in Washington without trying to toot our own horn. But the two thoughts I want to leave you with are, one is the challenging reversal of development that's occurring right now. People have invested decade after decade in helping push the world forward, and it's a tragedy that COVID hit. We also have inflation, which is really hurting the poorest people in the US and in the world. It's a giant challenge. And we have the fragility that is endemic in many parts of the world with government changeovers and with with refugees that are moving back and forth in order to find jobs and, above all, in order to find security. I was with a month ago in Berlin with Chancellor Merkel. We met 7 times over a period of 2 days, and there were African leaders in for a conference. And the conference was, how can the response to Afghanistan proceed when it creates so many of the security challenges that are going to be put forward? So the first thought I have is the reversal in terms of development. Poverty rates are going down, poverty rates are going up, per capita incomes are going down, and fragility is growing. And so that's the opposite of the direction that we all want to take the world, and it requires, I think, a huge amount of focus. And the second thought is that we're in, and we should recognize that, a time of immense upheaval. I was writing down some of the ways that we're in upheaval, but I just want to go through. Economics is in upheaval, trying to understand how 0% interest rates can be consistent with a growth rate that's continuing in the world and with a rising inflation rate. These are big challenges. Science is in a huge upheaval, trying to figure out how to push forward vaccines very rapidly in terms of the production schedule, how to deal with climate change, how to keep going with the innovation that's occurring in the digital world. All of these are very valuable to developing countries, and the benefits need to spread. We also have data itself. So at the World Bank, we are innovating in terms of how do we have data that's relevant for the problems that people are facing now, including the climate challenge. How are we measuring the greenhouse gas emissions reduction? One of the things that we've done on vaccines that's relevant from a data standpoint is a task force that I chair and co-chair with Tedros of the WHO, and joined by Ngozi of the WTO and Kristalina, my friend at the IMF, and we're working to supply data on vaccines that will allow and facilitate the delivery of vaccines to people in the developing world. It's a huge challenge because there's such a big gap, and our task force identifies the gap and reports data on it, which is important, a gap between the donations and the actual delivery of doses and the vaccination of people around the world. There's also an upheaval in finance, so we're looking for new ideas every day for ways to finance climate change, for ways to build more resources for the developing country. And so now I'll get to the pitch I wanted to make to you of what the World Bank has been doing in order to respond to these challenges. One is simply building our program very rapidly in the face of COVID. So we were able to deliver over the 15 months through June $157 billion of commitments to the developing world. That's up 60% from the previous 15 months. It's the fastest growth rate the world's ever experienced, and of course the biggest levels of commitments that it's made. And that was done with a flat real budget. So how is that possible? Well, clearly productivity is up a lot in terms of the people being able to interact with countries, even working from home. So that's been an achievement. We've been able to issue $100 billion of bonds over the last year, which mobilizes capital from around the world used for resources in developing countries. We are moving rapidly forward on climate, and I should say a note on that. You know, the World Bank is by far the biggest international financier of multilateral finance for climate, more than half of all the other international financial institutions. We have a goal going into COP26 of $100 billion of finance. The World Bank alone will be 25% of the whole global effort, bigger than the United States, than the UK and the other donors, and bigger than all the other international financial institutions combined. And it's been growing rapidly and will continue to grow. And one of the things I've wanted to do is to make sure it has impact. What's the results of this spending? We can't keep having bigger and bigger targets without talking very specifically about which countries will be able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and how might they do it. So these are challenges that involve data, they involve finance, they involve economics, and a range of upheavals that are going on in the world. And I'll conclude with mention of IDA, the International Development Association, part of the World Bank. We're in the midst of a very large fundraising campaign. We will be able to, I hope, have raised $100 billion from donors, and the United States is a very welcome and prized contributor to IDA that bridges partisan gaps in Washington and makes funds available to developing countries. I would be remiss in not thanking my wife, the director and the producer, for all that I've done over my many years, and all the other friends that are here tonight. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for a wonderful award and for all the work that you're doing on development around the world. Thank you all.
Please welcome back to the stage Governor Bill Haslam.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. To our honorees, we want to again thank you and pay tribute to you, to all of you, from sponsors to our international partners to folks who have been longtime friends of the Wilson Center. Thank you. It is great to be back and in person. Have a safe trip home, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thanks so much.